When our shadow becomes visible in others, it irks us, it annoys us, it creates a big emotional reaction in us. And some of us have gotten really good at pretending that we are all even keeled and normal, but on the inside, we still feel it. When people think trigger, people think it's like some outsized reaction that we give. But no, we're mostly concerned about our inner reaction. It doesn't matter whether you blew up on someone or not. What matters is, did you feel elevated within? Did it stop your inner world from going on as it was going on and created a spike? And that spike is our clue that something in our unconscious wants to come alive.
Welcome to Partners in Sublime, where we explore the teachings of depth psychology and Vedic philosophy to achieve the highest levels of personal growth and self-actualization. Join me as we tap into the unconscious for intuitive guidance and creative direction. I'm your host, Shagun Chopra. Let's begin.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of Partners in Sublime. Today, we're going to talk about triggers. Triggers are things that happen when something external to us bothers us. Someone does something and it annoys us. Someone doesn't do something and that annoys us. Or just something that takes place in our surroundings and it makes us feel uncomfortable or any kind of unpleasant emotion. So trigger is our catch-all word for that strong emotional response to something external to us. Now, triggers are fine. Our goal is not to make them go away. Our goal is to use them to learn something about ourselves. Because this journey of individuation, our personal growth journey, our spiritual journey, is fundamentally about discovering who we are and why are we here. And no better clue than triggers to tell us what might be going on inside of us. So let's begin by uncovering what kind of trigger we should pay attention to. Triggers can be a dime a dozen. They're happening all the time. Some are just little mild annoyances, and some throw us off our game entirely. So the more emotional charge a trigger carries, the more likely it is that it is pointing to something in your psyche, in your unconscious, that is wanting to come out, that is wanting to get your attention. So let's say you're going on about your day and you run into someone who says something that causes you to feel triggered. It is quite likely that this person just reflected your shadow back to you. And we've talked about persona and shadow before, right? Persona is the mask we wear to interact with the world. It is how we show ourselves to be in order to fit in society and culture. And shadow is the opposite of that. Shadow is everything we push away, we discard, we suppress, we disown in order to keep our persona intact. So shadow is fundamentally the opposite of the face that we show to the world. And because it's hidden from the world, it can also be hidden from ourselves. Like we stop thinking about it after a point. But when someone or something comes along that carries our shadow, we instantly feel that sense of repulsion that we have toward our own inner self, except that we are now projecting it on someone else. Our shadow is lodged in the dark parts of our psyche, and it's simply trying to come out. It's simply trying to get your attention by making itself visible in some other person. When our shadow becomes visible in others, it irks us, it annoys us, it creates a big emotional reaction in us. And some of us have gotten really good at pretending that we are all even keeled and normal, but on the inside, we still feel it. On the inside, we might find ourselves overthinking about something someone said for a long time. We might find ourselves feeling that emotion, that rise in blood pressure, and then just clenching our fists and letting it go and not saying anything. When people think trigger, people think it's like some outsized reaction that we give. But no, we're mostly concerned about our inner reaction. It doesn't matter whether you blew up on someone or not. What matters is, did you feel elevated within? Did it stop your inner world from going on as it was going on and created a spike? And that spike is our clue that something in our unconscious wants to come alive. Let's pay attention. So let me take an example here. Many, many years ago, I gave up eating meat as part of my spiritual practice. And I had come to be so attached to this idea of spiritual people don't eat meat that I had come to see eating meat as a bad thing. And because I thought of myself as a spiritual person and I was cultivating a spiritual persona, I didn't know it then. I thought I was just being real, but I was cultivating a spiritual persona. I pushed that aside in my shadow. Someone like me would have nothing to do with meat. And now, as life happens, I moved to the US. There's a lot more meat eating here than in Indian culture. And it's not just like the overall culture, it's specific people that I love and adore who also eat meat. So back in the day, I would get triggered by the presence of meat on a table. If I was eating with friends at a restaurant, if I was invited to someone's home, I would just wish for one good vegetarian meal with no meat around. And it was very important to me for my home to be free of meat. I remember this one time a friend of mine from business school came over. He was coming over to help me assemble furniture for my new apartment after we had graduated. And all I should have felt was gratitude. But instead, he told me that before coming here, he had stopped at a store and got himself some fish to take home later that day. And it really put me in a dilemma. I was spiritual. I had pushed that part of me away that was ready to have any kind of meat around me. Definitely not in my house, I thought. So I went to the nearest grocery store, bought a pack of ice, and then he stored the fish in his car on that bag of ice. I know it is so extreme, but that was me. And I wanted you to get the full picture of how being meat free was important to me. Fast forward a few years, I've done a lot of Jungian work, and I realized that I had been creating all these artificial boundaries based on food that were just a reflection of my own fear at not being spiritual enough. Even with my husband now, when we first met and first lived together, we were lucky to have two different kitchens in the house, and one was reserved for meat storage and cooking, and the other one was reserved for all my vegetarian food. And we would cook separately and then try to eat together. And I did that for months. And when I look back, I think that was so foolish to do. But at that time, that persona was really important to me, the persona of a spiritual person. So I rather not break it. So I would tell him that if I see meat in my fridge that triggers me, I don't want it here. You can keep it away from me. And as I did more shadow work and uncovered what was going on, I realized that I was simply afraid that all the things that I considered non spiritual would tempt me and veer me off my path. And then I would not be spiritual enough and I would not be accepted in a spiritual community. You can take a good thing like spirituality and then turn it into an ego contest. And I think that's what I was doing. So when I look back, I realize that reaction I had towards meat was manufactured by my ego that was trying to maintain a sense of supremacy and control over my being. And the more I looked behind the curtain, the more I dug into my unconscious. All that fear of not being spiritual enough went away. And along with it went away the fear of being around meat. Now, me and my husband, we share the same refrigerator. All kinds of meat is stored in it. We cook in the same dishes. We serve in the same dishes. I'm around meat all the time. And I'm not just saying this for the sake of this episode, but it really does not trigger me anymore. I attach no judgment to meat the way I used to, and nothing changed around me. My husband did not start doing anything different. The meat industry did not start doing anything different. It was just me. I had to do my inner work. I had to integrate my own shadow, and then the trigger simply dissolved. A little note here about a spiritual persona. So, ideally, our ego that is in charge steps away and realizes that we're actually led by our higher self, that we are nothing but consciousness. And in order to get to that higher self, we engage in spiritual practices. We meditate, we may pray, we may do chanting or any kind of rituals to get us closer to that higher self. When our ego is so insidious, it hijacks that process and then folds in spirituality as part of its ego identity. So now instead of operating from our higher self, we are now operating from an ego that has created a spiritual persona. And the ego hijacks almost every process, every attempt that we make to break away from the ego. That's why I've found it so helpful to have a coach. I lived in this meat, no meat divide for years, maybe even almost a decade, until I started working with a coach and all the sham that my ego had created started to crumble down. And I realized, oh, yeah, this is what I was doing. I was getting attached to a spiritual persona instead of being actually spiritual. So, this is my cautionary tale for all of you who are trying to walk the spiritual path. If you find yourself becoming more rigid in the process of doing so, stop and question yourself. Ask yourself, has your ego hijacked this process? Has the ego come to be so attached to this way of being that every other way is now at a different level? Have you unconsciously created a split in yourself that is keeping your energy logged in and you don't feel as free and happy in the world as you would imagine you might if you were being truly more and more spiritual? So, with that cautionary note out of the way, let's get back to triggers. So, a trigger, as I mentioned earlier, is this spontaneous, autonomous reaction to something that happens in the external world. And it gives us a clue as to what we might be suppressing on the inside. So, when you have a trigger, you want to get really curious about what is causing it. And the more you ask yourself questions like, why is this bothering me? What about this specifically is bothering me? How do I lead my life in a way to make sure that I'm not this way? It becomes really clear that there are parts of your personality that you just haven't tapped into for a long time, that you have forgotten about, that you have pushed away, that are simply saying, hey, we'd like to come out. We'd like to not be in the dark anymore. We would like to be integrated as part of your whole. And it doesn't mean that now you start have to doing things the opposite way. It simply means that you it simply means that you get to choose how you get to be, and you are no longer triggered by the opposite of whatever it is that you're trying to do in your life. Can you imagine what would happen if we all stopped getting triggered by other events, by news, by people who are different than us? It would be a much more peaceful inner world and a much more peaceful outer world as well. So, with that primer, let's dive into today's session. We will be listening to one of my relatively newer clients, Michelle. Michelle sought coaching because she wants to forge her own path through motherhood and entrepreneurship and weave them together. And in doing so, understandably, several fears are coming up. In this session, we talk through those fears and we identify one small trigger, comparatively small to the vast nature of her fears. We pick that small trigger to work with to demonstrate how the unconscious influences how we see our situation and how we have far more power to act and to be in any situation than we realize. So listen on, and I'll see you on the other side. So, what's going on?
Um, since last time we spoke, I think two outstanding things that I constantly debating and thinking about, which are number one, like my entrepreneurial dream, and number two is the dream of becoming a mother. Both are very significant and important to me. What's going on? I'm taking my time to reflect and understand myself so that I can be better at making those decisions. And the past couple of weeks, I also, you know, constantly battle between, in terms of career choice between the path that I already know, like being a PM, being like working in tech, in corporate and startup. Those are the things that I have done. But I always go back to the dream of me, being an entrepreneur. And I I also feel the same way. I very strongly about being a mother. The path that I knew of was like very independent me, figuring out everything on my own, building up my career and everything. But the path that I think is more fulfilling to me doesn't seem to be that stable, that certain. But for some reason, it just keep coming back, and I just feel like for me to, I really want to calm my inner self so that I can better prepare to make, number one, making those decisions, and number two, getting, really enjoy that path if I chose that path. So yeah, so I am in the process. I don't think that I finally there, but it's beautiful to visit myself and walking through this journey.
Yeah. I like that you're excited about the journey because it's not often easy, but it's what we need to do to get to the other side. And in some ways, both your goals seem kind of related, right? Whether it's becoming an entrepreneur or becoming a mother, it's that same
Yeah.
sense of having a creative force in you and using it to birth something in the world. So I'm sure they're both compounded by each other in some ways. And talk to me a little bit about the fear, because you said like these paths
Yeah.
are not stable, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was start off first by, of course, the fear of being a mom. I think there are a couple of things. I think number one is about whether I am going to be who I am. What I mean by that is, I know being a mom comes with a lot of responsibility, and sometimes your career will change significantly. Sometimes it also affect, your hormones, your um, mental health, and a lot of the things that come with it. And one of the things that I'm afraid of is, I worked really hard to build my career, and I have seen firsthand a friend of mine who, after become a mom, her priorities switch, and she now chose a path of working for a stable job so that she can have more time with the baby, with the kid. So I'm also afraid of, like, you know, um, things that I work very hard for. Is that going to matter after I give birth? And will I change my career entirely? Will I be able to make the decision um, solely up to, my interest or my skill, or the circumstance, or the environments and things like that? For example, companies who don't really value or give freedom for, working mom, or even like some jobs just like, require a lot of travel that I have to say no to. I mean, there's a lot of sacrifice that go to it. And I think that is a career part. I think the second thing is about the uncertainty of, having a partner that go with you along the way. So growing up in a family, both my parents really took care of us, the three kids, and they give all the life to us. I really value that having both parents, to me, is the best for the the development and the future of the child. But sometimes this is something you can't really control. There are uncertainty whether your partner would go along, whether your partner will become a great father, or even something like, something happened to them. Or, I also know that some couples, they start fighting after they face with such a big challenge of, having kids together, and they decided to get divorced and things like that. And I fear that, my kid will grow up not having a great and happy family. And so those are the things I know, like, of course, I can't really plan everything out, but those are the uncertainty that will come along the way. And I just don't know what is the best way to go about it. Whether I just shoot a shot and just pray for the best, or is there anything I can do to make life easier for me, for my parents, for my family, and then for my child?
Yeah, the three main fears I'm hearing is one, that if you're employed, then your employer might not support working parents. So your career takes a back seat. The second thing is if you were working for yourself, like that's a lot of uh, pressure to put on
Yeah.
yourself because you're having to juggle something that's less stable with motherhood, which is inherently, destabilizing in so many ways. And then finally, your partner not being able to be there for whatever reason, whether they're not into, raising a child the way you are, whether it's, for whatever reason, that fear that I might have to raise this child by myself. Those are your fears.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very nice way you're summarizing it. And as I mentioned, the entrepreneurial dream, right? There's also lots of up and down, and raising a child, you also want to be able to financially be stable, and insurance and all of that. And living in the Bay Area, I think those are the things that constantly come to my mind. How am I going to be able to ensure the future and the support that I need for my child? If I want to pursue that path where I want to be a little bit more risky and entrepreneurial driven, how am I able to achieve those two together? There's a part of me, I think that it would be very beautiful that I want to pursue, but it's also part of me was like, just be realistic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you did a very good job summarizing those three things that I have in my mind.
Yeah. Let me add a fourth thing because I'm picking up on it. It's not just the fact that your child won't be supported, it's that you will not be supported in having this dream life where you get to do it all. Because, as we often
Yeah.
get messages from society that you can't do it all. You can either do motherhood or you can focus on your career, or if you're being asked to do it all, it's coming at the cost of your own sanity and your interpersonal relationships. So there's a sense in you that, oh, you have this perfect idea of the future where you are an entrepreneur, where you are a mother, but you're not supported.
Yeah. Yeah. And it all come to me about the timing, because I feel like at that time, I'm also mature in myself of relying that I am ready to be a mother. I'm also maturing in the sense that I no longer want to work for somebody. So those two consult at the same time, which make it more difficult because then, for example, if I continue to do my stable job, the one that I want to do, am I going to be happy in the next 2 years? Maybe not. There's I know very clearly when I look at the other job, description and everything, I'm like, I just want to do something that is more meaningful, and on top of that, really fulfilling what I set out to do in this life. And those two maturing experience actually come together, which make me even more confused.
Yeah, yeah. I think you have a very good sense of your inner calling, like where life is wanting to take you, where you're wanting to go with it. But it's just scary because it's all happening together, and it's also just very demanding. When there's so much fear and so many different kinds of fear, it's hard to deal with it all at once. What's one place you think you can start as a first step in getting yourself out of the situation you're in? And we're not trying to bypass this fear, just so I'm clear.
you know the fear of not being able to financially support my child is a little bit of a long-term fear, because I do know that I have enough saving for what I need in the next 6 to 12 months. So I know that it is a fear, but it's not something that I need to urgently act on or I need to jump immediately to a new job. It allowed me to be able to, just give me some time, some months to really hone in on whether I can discover like an entrepreneur, idea or things that I want to do without the fear of like support my family right away. So that is the thing that I think could help elevate some of these. Um, the other thing is, even though I am still unsure about my partner, where they are, I do know that I have a full loving and caring family, and my parents are like my strong rock in peace harbor. And I know that whatever I chose in life, they will 100% support me. And if I want to be the mother, and if anything goes, anyway, they would be there to support me and kind of like shield me for a period of time until I can, get my feet back to the ground. So I'm not going to be falling like all over. I know that my family are going to be there and support me, whatever I do or wherever I go.
Yeah. So
Those are the two things that I can think of right now.
yeah. So this is you talking yourself out of your fear, right? And it can really work sometimes when we see evidence in the external world where we, can point to our bank account and say, yes, there's enough money there for at least a period of stability, not for your whole life, but at least for a period. And you can look at your family and say, yes, there's enough support there that even if I did not have my partner, they would be supportive. So that's one part of the piece, right? Like sometimes the external is good enough that it can help us, and sometimes we need to go much more internal to see like why am I still scared despite the external factors checking out. So one way to figure out what is the most scary to us is to figure out what brings up the most emotion, like which fear brings up the most emotion. So whether you think about running out of money or not being able to juggle or having a kid who doesn't have a dad, of all these things that you listed, which one makes you feel most emotional?
I think the last one, the kid without a dad, something that I'm most afraid of. And I think is rooted into my family. My sister is a single mom, and she have raised her child since the child was born even. And my parents were there to support her, but I knew she went through so much in her life. And in a way, I look at her, I don't want my child to be not having a father. So I think that that probably would be something that is super close to me, and that scared me the most because I think, you know, money or job, things like that, I I don't think is a permanent thing. But having a partner that truly understand you, truly support you, I do think that this is like a two people in the work together, and sometimes a lot of things are outside of your control. So maybe you know I think that's something that I'm afraid the most of, the idea right now.
Yeah. So, what in your life is creating this fear? Like, what makes you think that's going to happen to you?
Um, if I am very honest to myself, I think that my I never truly invested in a relationship, my love life, in the way that um, I invested in my career. And every few years, I you know, I am in a relationship every few years, and the relationship, after a while, I realized that it's not for me. Either the person, my ex in the past, was not fully support my career, or that I have to go, or right now the person that I'm with not fully in the idea of having a child together with me, even though that he's super supportive of everything else in my life. And so I'm afraid that once I realize my full need from my partner, I might discover that my current partner is not suitable for me and I would have to move on. So I what happened in my life that make me fear is that I'm not fully aware of my need when I am in a relationship. And so I am always in the relationship for years, and then later on I realized that I need to move on. So I regret that I did not put a lot of thoughts into the partner. But on the other, in hindsight, I also think that I'm still evolving as a person. So I'm not also understanding everything that I need until I need it. And so for me, part of that is the inevitable, change or evolvement or development of a person. But part of that I wish that I know before I get married or before I got into a serious relationship, all my need, so that I can be prepared and choose a partner that would not give me that kind of uncertainty or fear, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of self pressure and self judgment that you should have known everything you wanted when you met this person.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you like this in general too? Are you very hard on yourself about having all the information, making the right decision?
Um, Not every single day, um, but a few times that I had that thought. Um, and those are usually like breaking points where I realize that I need to make some change.
And does
Yeah.
that cross over to other domains like work, friendships, family?
Uh, Work, yes, not family or friends. So I'm very lucky that with friendship and family, I am my whole self, and I never chose to be a friend with somebody or chose a family just because of out of fear. It's because I am my authentic self, and there's no regret there. With work, I also sometimes make decision based off of how the society see me, values me based off of what I do. And there are sometimes some jobs or some environment that I know not super good for me. It might be either very stressful coming in, or turn into like a political environment, but I chose to stay just because I need to figure out the next step while still want to be seen by the society that I'm doing some good work. So sometimes I beat myself up because even for right now, I don't like my job at all. The way they treated me, the way I saw a lot of the things that I disagree with, but I still have to work for that job until I find something else so that I don't have an income gap. So yeah, I mean, not super happy with it. I wish that I don't have to stay. And even like last night, I wake up in the middle of the night, beating myself like I don't like to be waking up like this, and I want to walk away, but I cannot walk away at this moment. So yeah, so that happened to work too.
Yeah. So, friends and family, you can be more authentic. But when it comes to your work and even your current relationship with your partner, you have, there's more pressure on yourself to get it right. And if you don't get it right or don't get to do it on your own terms, there's a lot of beating yourself up. So, tell me this, are you able to generally extend yourself compassion when you make a decision and say it doesn't turn out quite all right? You make a decision, then you realize
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't the best decision. For instance,
Mm-hmm.
you made a decision to take this job, and now you're kind of wondering, is this the right job for me based on how you're being treated? Same with your partner, you chose to be with him, and now you're kind of wondering, is this the right person for me for what I'm discovering now my goals are? So when that happens, are you able to extend yourself some compassion? Like, oh, like back then, Michelle did this, but now things have changed, not a problem. Or you're like, how could Michelle do that? Like, why did she not think this through? Why is she, why did she make this decision without considering all the possibilities and getting it 100% right? Like, when that happens, what's your self-talk like?
Yeah, I guess my self-talk is rather more on the critical side than compassion side. I am much easier to forgive somebody's mistake than my own thing. And I, yeah, and I am also not a confrontational person in any type of way, almost like to the point that I can no longer endure something, then I will say it or chose something else. But on a day to day, I guess I'm not able to voice what I want. For work, it's actually a little bit clearer because I've been working for many, many years and I really know who I am and my strengths. And so when work turns into a bad situation or environment, I know where my stand is. I just cannot move on because of the financial obligation, but I know where my stand is and I know I'm not um, putting up with certain things. So I feel like for that, I still love myself and protect my peace at work. But I'm kind of struggling to do that for myself in a relationship or in my personal life. When relationship doesn't go as my expectation, I tend to beat myself up a little bit, and I just blame on my immaturity when it comes to relationship. And also truthfully, I did not invest a lot of time on thinking into relationships in my whole life. Ever since, my first relationship to going to the US to, now having this relationship and things like that, I approach it in a very, I would say, pure way, and put myself out there. And, a lot of the time, the right person come in, or is the kind person loving and caring about me, then I think it's enough for me. I do not really know how to approach relationship, and and yeah, so I feel like if there's something about relationship is about me, nobody else to blame, and I am the only one who in charge of that. Whether versus at work, there's a lot of the things that are outside of your control, and there's a lot of the time where the environment actually, you either suitable for this environment or not. So it's a lot of the things that it's okay to, to have a conflict at work. just because of some environment. But yeah, I don't know in my relationship. Maybe this is a lesson for me to spend more time and investment into that area. But yeah, I haven't prioritized that to the point that I fully, truly know myself. So it's easier for me to kind of blame the lack of effort on my part.
So what you're saying is when something goes wrong at work, you know, you know that it's not you that's responsible for it fully because you've taken the time and you have the experience to understand like what's yours and what's theirs. But when the same thing
Yeah.
happens in a relationship, because you haven't spent that time doing self inquiry about what you want,
Yeah.
it's hard for you to know is
Yeah.
this a me thing, is this a them thing, or what part of it is me, what part of it is them.
Yeah. 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 For example, my partner tend to wake up pretty late in the day and I'm like a morning person. I was completely okay with it until recently. And until recently, I start voicing my concern like, I want you to get up earlier. I want us to spend more time together and things like that. Um, and I start receiving the feedback being, I've been like that my whole life. Why you didn't tell me anything before we get married or before then? Now you start showing that you're not happy with who I am as a person. That was the objection from my partner. And it's just me thinking, am I becoming more demanding or am I triggered to now not happy with those things? Or am I just not understand my need of having a partner that share a lot of the activities with me, and my lifestyle with me? So it's hard for me to answer those questions because I don't feel like I never put the requirements into the list. Just those small things. And then, of course, the child thing is the bigger type of way where I also initially did not ask for and now I ask for. So this is hard for me to discern, you know, my contribution into this whole thing, or am I being so critical about myself, or is it actually something that I did not do well? So
Yeah.
yeah,
I know it is super hard in the moment, but this is excellent learning opportunity for you because you cannot walk into a relationship knowing exactly how you're going to be. Like the whole idea of the relationship is that you will use that relationship to learn something about yourself. And our partners know all the ways to trigger us. It's like you will just attract the very person who will bring up these things in you. So to that extent your relationship is going to plan. Like it's not weird in any way. Now what the mistake we make is that when we get triggered, we look at our partner and we go like it's about them. And that's where I would try to suggest an alternative process. So we have, we have our persona that we show to the world. We're somebody, right? We have a personality at work, in relationships. It may be a little different in different setting, but there's a way you show up in your relationship. In order to show up that way, everything else gets put in your shadow. So like you cannot have light and darkness at the same time. They're opposites. So when you bring light, darkness goes in your shadow. When it's nighttime, light goes in the shadow, and so on. So there are things you've put in your shadow which when you see in your partner, you're triggered by it. So it's an opportunity for you to see what is something you've put away. It's your projection. And once you reclaim that projection back, use that to learn about yourself, it becomes very clear whether it's a you thing or a them thing. So in this case, let's just go with this example because you're right. Like talking about the child is so big, but let's start here. Let's see what it's like to reclaim your projection. And with your projection, your power comes back too. So you won't feel as confused about what's going on anymore. What are some ways in which you would describe your partner when he's waking up late? Give him some adjectives.
Um, Procrastination, mm, lazy, lack of motivation.
I might animate this a bit, so forgive me. This has nothing to do with him, by the way. We're just engaging in a process. So that's not okay. He's a procrastinator. He's lazy. He's unmotivated. That's some of what is going on in your head when you watch him do that. And what does it mean for someone to be like that? Like, what happens to a person who is this way?
It drags themselves down and it drags other people down with the lack of energy. And the other thing is affect our ability to share precious moments together where we are so much like doesn't have too much overlapping between us.
Yeah. So someone who's like that drags other people down is basically choosing themselves or something that's not important over sharing important moments together. What do you think happens to that person if they continue to live their whole life like that?
Yeah, I think that it makes the person continue to under deliver and finding excuse to not being able to accomplish things in their life. I yeah, I just tend to associate people who getting up early, being ahead of the game, to be someone who is hardworking and over deliver and also prioritize learning. Because getting up early means you think, you act, you practice before everybody else waking up, and then you have ability to reflect and being a very thoughtful person. I do think that if you wake up late, set yourself in the path where you have to always catch up. You certainly could be late for certain things, or you can do a few things at your day. And once it accumulates, it will be years of that. It's not just the days, but months and years of being after or being behind. And I I truly don't think it's the right thing you want to do for yourself. To me, the other way is a better way.
Yeah.
But I also understand, to his defense, which we talk about this, that his his mind work better at nighttime and he tend to stay late at night where he can focus and process information better, and he had been like that for many many years in his life. So part of me, I was like, my way is different from his way, and I can associate things whatever I want, but changing to my way may or may not necessarily be the right thing for him, or it will require a lot of effort for him over a period of time if he really wants to do so. And the question is why he had to do so. And I I'm here thinking, you changing for your partner, you changing it for yourself, but it seems it's not good enough for him to do that.
Yeah. I sense your disappointment that you're not worthy enough to him to make this change, even though you realize that different people work different way. Like there's that emotional component to it.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of, maybe he had to be that way, maybe he works better this way. And I think fundamentally what we want to do is use the relationship to learn about ourselves. Yes, you're learning about the other person, but really it's about, you uncovering what's within you. So let's keep going with this thing that we're doing where we're like, what happens to this person who's like that? And so far I'm hearing that this person gives excuses, they are behind, they underdeliver. They almost sound like their life is wasted and they're a victim. That's kind of what I'm picking up on.
I think that is, that is my perspective. I don't think they think that way.
Yeah.
So I think that might be a different reality that we are in.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is. But a part of you is triggered because you do think that way. Okay, and that's
Yeah.
that's the part we're trying to get to know.
Yeah.
And let's just play this out. This person, no matter what happens, doesn't change. What do you think is the ultimate fate for this person? How would they end up?
I think that they would continue to disappoint themselves and doing less things that they wanted to do in life, if they do not change.
Like their life would be unfulfilled, basically.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really not a life worth living, huh?
Yeah, that is not. And I know at the moment they're also not super satisfied with, their current life and their work. They really value their own career, their own entrepreneurial life as well. And they're now having to work like long hours just so that they can have some income. So they in itself is like similar to mine in a way that we're living a life to fulfill today's needs, but we know that we are putting in the shadows, to your words, the life that we truly want to live. And I also think that the lack of motivation to wake up early is also stemmed from the lack of motivation for them to even work, right? Because why am I waking up early to go to the job that I don't enjoy?
Yeah.
I'd rather just sleep more, right? So it's a cycle. It's not just one thing, but I think
Yeah.
it's also the lack of motivation on their actual life right now,
Yeah. I
which
I really love this
yeah.
about you, Michelle, that you're able to hold in perspective what their experience is, what their reality is. There's a lot of times people talk about their partners as if it's black and white. They're wrong, I'm right. Do you see what I see? Isn't it bad? So I love that you you already have that perspective that something's going on for them, which is making them this way, or something went on for them in the past that made them fall into these patterns. They're not good or bad. That's just how they came to be.
Yeah.
Now, for yourself, though, the fact that you're triggered by it is telling you something about yourself. And I want you to approach yourself with the same wonder that you're approaching your partner. And somewhere I'm hearing that there's a lot of pressure on you to be hardworking, to be motivated, to be over delivering, to be intentional, to not be a victim of your life in any way. So, how might your life be different if you did not put a lot of pressure on yourself to be perceived that way?
I mean, I'm glad that you brought that up. I also never questioned that, but I just feel like it's naturally coming to me as of, it's almost not like a society expectation, but almost like when I grow up, to me, waking up early, getting ahead of the game, or be more hardworking than other people in the office or in class, it's just supposed to be where, how I think I should be and I should do. And even, when I start talking to you, Shagun, and I was in a pretty dark time, there's part of me, I'm like, I need to get over this. I need to be a better person because I deserve that. So in a way, I think it's a good thing. It doesn't make me feel pressure in a way that is like, oh my God, I'm scared and like this is not me. It's actually me that I always strive for being a better person, even though I'm in a not good environment or not good relationship or whatever that is. I'm always I'm, I think there's always part of me. I'm like, I deserve more. I can be a bigger person. I can do better things in life, and that just keep me going. So waking up early is just one of the things that I think naturally fall into that, who I am as a person.
Yeah. I think what you're highlighting is so crucial. Like, there's a reason we come to be the way we want. It helps us in our circumstances. It has helped you get so much. By being this way, it's been so helpful in terms of you being able to overcome any hardship that came. You had this growth mindset. You
Right.
kept growing were as at work as a person. So it's important to have so much love and compassion for yourself in making these choices. And you made great choices, you stand by them, and you're like, I'm not sure if I want to change that. They've been great for me. So, to that, I would say, like, something about them is still limiting you because you wouldn't get triggered otherwise. If you were genuinely okay being this way,
Mm.
you would not feel triggered. The trigger is telling you that something in your shadow needs to come out. Because otherwise, it's as simple as that. Oh, I like eating fish. You like eating chicken. No problem. Like, people like eating different things. I'm happy with my choice. You're happy with yours. There's no judgment. There's no trigger going to a restaurant with a friend and ordering different things. The trigger is happening because there's a judgment attached to, no, my dish is better than your dish. So you are spending energy holding your dish in high regard. And because your one part is doing this, the other part is doing that. The
Right.
other part is pushing something down so you can always show up
Right.
like this. And I would venture a guess, like, there are days that you are tired or you want to give yourself a little break, but it's really hard for you to do that because this is who you think you are. You always have to show up motivated and over deliver and hard work, like get ahead of everybody else. So what if you wanted to spend like a lazy morning in bed? You almost couldn't do it, right?
I do it and I will feel bad about it.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
right. You're
that's the
right.
lack of
Yeah.
judgment. Yeah. So we don't want to take this exercise to mean anything about your partner. Like, this is you learning about yourself. And I think you are realizing that that's how you put pressure on yourself to show up all the time. And what I would ask you is like, is that something you think is creating more stress in your life? Are you happy with doing that all the time? Or is there a part of you that might want to pull it back a little bit?
I think it
And just
definitely
to
helps
clarify,
to.
I'm not saying stop waking up early or stop doing your things. I'm talking about the pressure associated with them. Can you drop the pressure of like, I always have to do that?
Yeah. It's hard for me to answer that uh, because I also not haven't truly see how my life would be without pressuring that part of me, like without showing up like that. So I don't know. I guess it might be, but I just don't know because I'm so used
Yeah.
to a certain way rather than the other way.
And it's understandable because in your mind, the connection between taking it easy on a lazy Sunday morning and you living an unfulfilled life, like that connection is there, right? So
Yeah.
you're afraid that if I let go of my ways a little bit, then I will have an unfulfilled life, and you don't want that. So it's basically that fear
Mhm.
of your life turning out that way that is
Yeah.
stopping you from embracing some qualities that are there. They're just latent. But they are wanting to come out. That's what the trigger is telling you.
It's very interesting perspective.
Yeah. And we can examine that fear and work with it, maybe in another session. But for now, if you were to believe, just for a second, hypothetical world, if you weren't afraid of leading an unfulfilled life, and if you weren't afraid of always having to show up very motivated, very on top of things, what might be a little something you would allow yourself to do? What might open up for you?
I think I I think I might make more mistakes, but I also may have more interesting experiences because I dare myself to try different things than right now. I still feel like giving those pressure also in a way associating with putting myself a clear boundary of certain things that I don't want to cross. And sometimes it's limiting myself. So yes, to answer your question, I might just be more, stress-free person and try different things and end up just like, just move on and things like that. Maybe smile more and laugh at my mistake more. um,
Yeah, I like the sound of that. Can you imagine doing that? Can you
I kind of
imagine
like the sound of
looking?
that too.
Yeah, can you imagine looking at your relationship and being like, duh, what was I thinking? I didn't even think about kids. Like, being able to actually laugh at yourself and be like, wow, that old version of me, she didn't know, and that's okay, you know. It's
Yeah.
it's that sense of not taking yourself too seriously, being yourself, making yourself open to new experiences and being more relaxed, overall, less stress.
Yeah. I love
Takes a lot
that.
of energy to maintain this split, to always be like, this is me, this is me, this is me. Then I push this away, push this. Like your arms get tired doing that
Yeah.
all your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, does it feel
Yeah.
lighter, just that hypothetical version of you?
Yeah. Yeah. That that's one question, and that's just one, I would say, a sentence that I just feel immediately better, different. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. You basically took your hand off for a second and being like, oh, what might life be like if this part of me comes out, you know? And your hand is like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. So you feel relaxed. You feel like you freed up some energy. And that's just in the hypothetical. Like you haven't even like done anything, uh, you know, crazy per your standards. So yeah. Okay. One last thing before we wrap up today. Given everything we discussed and the fact that you felt a little bit more open and free, knowing that you don't have to be that way all the time, what is a little something you might try to do in your real life to make that hypothetical just a little bit more real?
Two things. One is waking up feeling like today is a new day, and it doesn't matter what happened yesterday. I have ability to be free and to set myself, how I want to live my day. Nothing doesn't matter. Everything happened doesn't matter. Just put that off the shoulder. The second thing is just try, you know, pushing myself out there for a little bit more, doing different things, or just risk a little bit more. Even with small actions every single day, and laugh at it, smile at it, trying a little bit of risky activity that I haven't tried before.
Mm,
Yeah,
nice. Is there something you have in mind when you say that?
mm, I'm so afraid of swimming. So maybe I'm going to try swimming when I go to Costa Rica in like 3 weeks. So we'll see.
Oh, that is nice. I can relate to that. I've been terrified of drowning since a young child, so it was very liberating to get in the water and try to learn. And I'm still a terrible swimmer, but I'm not afraid the way I used to be. So it will totally free up some energy. I can say that from personal experience. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for listening to that conversation. The first thing I want to say about that is whenever we engage in any kind of introspective activity, and coaching is really great in doing that, we may start with so many different things, but it's so important to narrow our focus so that we are not just running in the circles of breath, but we can actually go deep. And Michelle voiced several fears that she has related to her desired path of pursuing motherhood and entrepreneurship together. But the fear that was causing the biggest emotional spike in her was that of being a single mom. Her partner maybe not supporting, her partner maybe not being up for the challenge of raising kids, or just not being in her life at some point. And you can see all those fears originated from what she saw happen with her sister. So, somewhere in her psyche, her mind created a split that this is the kind of motherhood I want, and this is the kind of motherhood I don't want. And every time we create that split, we lock up some of our energy, a good half of our energy, to keeping that split in place. And we're not really aware of it until something happens in the external world that triggers us. And I'm sure there are many things that happen between Michelle and her husband that might trigger her, that might activate this fear of, oh no, I'm going to have to be a solo parent, or oh, I'm not going to have the support that I need. But for this session, we decided to focus on one trigger. Not because one trigger will solve the entire problem, but it demonstrates to us that what we're seeing in the external world is a reflection of our unconscious, and then we can take this process and replicate it for many different areas of life, many different interactions, and continue doing so until that fear goes away. So, this is what Michelle did when she started to examine her trigger when her partner wakes up late. Before I say something about the trigger itself, I just want to take a second to comment on the overall developmental process that Michelle is. You can see that she's quite advanced in the work domain of her life. She knows how to tell apart what's hers and what's not hers in a toxic work environment. And she's not afraid of having confrontations if needed. But when it comes to her personal life, she tends to avoid conflict. She hasn't matured as much in figuring out what she wants and how to go about asking for it. She endures more emotional challenges than she would do at work. And this is totally normal. We're not all progressing all areas of life at the same time. Sometimes when career takes the front wheel, something else takes the back seat. And in her case, that was her relationship. And that's perfectly fine. What is most important is acknowledging that a part of you has lagged behind a little bit. And now let's start to grow that part, and let's start to get a more holistic sense of life, all the domains of life, not just one or two. So in Michelle's case, that weakest area is her area of relationships. And I'm really glad that she chose to focus on that for this session and in general in our coaching. Throughout our discussion, I'm sure you saw how strong Michelle's inner critic was. And that critic to me is always the clue, even if you're not getting triggered by anything in the external world, which in this case she was. That inner critic to me is always the clue that there is some form of splitting going inside the psyche, that your mind has pronounced some qualities, some ways of being to be holier than thou, and others get a don't show me your face type of reaction. So the inner critic always pops up when something from that low area is trying to show itself. And the critic will try to silence it using that very harsh voice. So it's sometimes it's just not about the emotional spike we feel when somebody else does something. It can also be what we feel toward our own selves when we do something that we think is inappropriate. So all that to say that there's always a lot in the unconscious to uncover if you find yourself engaging in a lot of negative self-talk. So when I dove deep with Michelle, we uncovered that there are qualities in her that she had cultivated in order to survive in the world. And her trigger was a reflection of her partner demonstrating the opposite of those qualities. Michelle is someone who always worked twice as hard and over delivered and tried to be ahead of the game. She had pushed away going with the flow, being relaxed, taking it easy. And when she saw her partner do those things, it would trigger her because it's something that she had pushed away in herself. And by pushing away these qualities, she'd also logged in a good amount of psychic energy in her unconscious. So this energy erupts when we get triggered. But there's also a way to consciously work our way through the trigger and then just release this energy and be free. So there's no need for it to come out during triggers. It can just be freed up by shining light on it, which is what she did. As we talked, Michelle's partner did not change. He did not suddenly start waking up early. Her life circumstances did not change. But what changed was there was a recognition that I've been really hard at work at cultivating this persona. And maybe I'd like to let some other things into my life now and not be so rigid in my idea of right and wrong. Personally, doing shadow work is so satisfying to me. It's very nice for me to see clients getting a taste of the individuation process and realizing how much agency they have moment to moment. And no one else can come and disturb their peace if they have done their work. It really is true. It doesn't mean that triggers will stop happening. It means that you'll get so good at responding to triggers that with every trigger, you're going to be like, thank you. There's something for me to learn here. And you'll just get to that process. You're not going to dwell on it and think about what you can do to change the other person. So if you enjoyed watching that transformation the way I did, it's time to turn the focus to yourself. Examine your own triggers, your own shadow. Examine what kind of persona you've cultivated that requires so much energy to hold up that other parts have just been logged in and can't come out. Your triggers are offering you a clue as to what might be locked up in your shadow. And the more you pay attention to the clue, the more you can unearth that shadow material, the more you can integrate it into your life. And you can free up so much energy to do things that you really want to do, energy to do things that you were born for. And as you bring light to your shadow, so many more options become available to you. You can consciously choose to do the things that you've been doing, or you can choose to do something different. It doesn't matter whether you switch your way of being or not. In Michelle's case, she doesn't need to start to get up late now. And you don't need to switch up how you are either. All you need is a transition from I have to be this way to I choose to be this way. And shadow work can be very hard to do on your own. At least that was my experience. I thought I had been on the spiritual path for several years before I encountered shadow work. So it is okay to get somebody's help in doing so. And if that person can be me, I'd be happy to help you. You can go to shagunchopra.com/ask to submit your question or to apply to get coached on the show. And I'd be more than happy to walk you through your own shadow. You'll be amazed at what you uncover and how much free you feel afterward. Well, that's all I have for today. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for being my partner in Sublime today. I hope you enjoyed diving into the unconscious with me. To ask a question or get coached on the show, visit shagunchopra.com/ask or click the link below. See you next time.